Now, Bill, let's talk a little bit about the culture of Bill Brown Sales. And I think that's what many of our viewers will find so fascinating with some of the longevity of your employees. What is your trick to keeping these people?
Oh man, I don't know. The word trick is
Not the right word.
not the right word. I would say this. I like to think that we hire above average people with above average potential. And then we try to find a way to help them reach their potential for their benefit as well as ours. So I think of our employees like my children. It's a family, sounds hokey, but I think of them as my extended family. And so as a result, what I want them to do is to achieve their potential the best way that I know how. And that's to help them understand that they can do more if they think positively about it.
Would you say you push them hard?
I hope that I lead by example, because I never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do, but I do push them hard.
I mean, I've heard reports of some of your salesmen, you would have 6 a.m. conference calls.
Yes.
That might go 2 or 3 hours, and you kind of do it before the workday starts so they can work.
That's an exaggeration, but not too far off. I don't go 2-3 hours because I couldn't sustain that, but I do call them at 6 o'clock my time. If they're in the east, it's 7 o'clock their time, or I call them after hours if it's going west.
Right,
And,
sure.
Yeah.
But do you still go through with them account by accounts to keep your kind of your fingers on the pulse of the business?
It's gotten too large. What I do is on my own call the customers and ask them how we're doing. What do they think? I've always felt that our customer is an integral part of our business, so that whatever we do, if it doesn't benefit that customer, we're not doing something right. Because really, what we're selling is value. And if a customer doesn't perceive that we bring value to him or her, then we are not doing our jobs.
Now, let's go back to some of your history. 1955 is when it started.
Right.
What were you doing before 55?
Well, from 1950 to 1955, I worked for Hasselite as an industrial engineering trainee. I worked for a company called Harry Maurer and Associates, and then I joined full-time at Hasselite, and I became eventually the assistant to the vice president who was a partner in the company, Eli Winkle, and my job was operations and operational efficiency.
Okay. And from there, where did you go?
Well, at that point, I left in 1955, and I started Bill Brown Sales.
Okay. And in addition to Bill Brown Sales, to help pay the bills, you did a little work at a post office.
Right. I worked at the Skokie post office from 5 to 12, 5 days a week, and the post office was very nice to me. When I needed to travel, they would give me time off.
5 p.m. to midnight?
5 p.m. to midnight.
Okay, 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Okay. And you did that to help fund Bill Brown Sales as it was starting out.
Exactly.
So that was obviously a tremendous work ethic. Do you see that kind of work ethic out of young people today?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I don't. I think that being a child of the Depression, having parents that were working, 2 jobs and doing whatever they could to fund my sister and I started working at 7 years old. It sounds strange, but I was delivering prescriptions for a pharmacy, and he didn't pay me. He allowed me to take the tips that I would get for delivering the prescriptions, and that's what I earned.
Let's speak for a minute about technology, because technology has changed so much since you started in your career. How have you embraced technology to continue to be one of the leaders in the lighting industry?
Well, I can honestly tell you that technology is how I really grew my business. I was always looking for new technology to be ahead of the market. So whether it was gasket enclosures, I was one of the first importers of gasket enclosures. I was one of the first manufacturers of gasket enclosures by somebody else. And then eventually my customers drove me to becoming my own manufacturer. Yes, I've always been very active in the IES. My business was strictly trying to survive that first 3 to 5 years. But in 1961, I joined the IES.
Okay.
And believe me, here as a sales agent, here I am going to the IES meetings, and I'm very proud. I'm over 50 years a member of the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America. I've been very proud to be, I was the first chairman of the marketing committee. I was a chairman of the International Relationships Committee. I was, I got involved with, I'm now involved with the Energy Committee.
And to this day, I see you still at board meetings.
Yes.
So you come to the board meetings.
I go to every board meeting that I can. I find that to get at what's going on in the society, the best way is to sit in on a 4-hour session of the society as they get all of their reports across the board. It tells you what's going on. As a matter of fact, one of my very good friends is John Sealander. John Sealander worked for Curlin Lighting when I first met him, and then he went to work for Lithonia Lighting, or ABL, and he became a president of the society. Well, he's going to be a speaker at the LED conference in Las Vegas next week. Chip Israel, who has been a very important member of the Specification Society, a very interesting designer. He's a well-reputed specification person. He has lent his time and energies, and he's now president of the society, and he's also going to be in Las Vegas. And so as a result, I want to be there because I want to understand what they're doing, what their perception of the marketplace is, and where it's going. I go to Frankfurt. I was one of the first American companies to have a stand in Frankfurt. That was back in the early 80s. And people ask, what was I doing there? Well, I've been there for many, many years. Guangzhou, we now have a stand in Guangzhou, China. It's an affiliate of the Frankfurt Light and Build Show, but that part of the world is growing. India, China, that part of the world needs lighting. I can tell you this, the Indians, the Chinese are very bright people, and they are very much involved in trying to get their countries established in the world, and they're using their labor costs to do that. And so what's happening with us is that we're finding that in order to be competitive, we have to become more efficient in our manufacturing processes. And so we as ALP, and we as Bill Brown Sales representing other companies, really look to growing efficiency in order to be competitive.
And efficiency is important, but in those plants, India, China, we read about Foxconn, we read about the suicides. How do you ensure that plants that either you own or that you represent are treating their employees humanely?
Wow, that's a big question. First of all, we don't really own any plants in China. We have a joint venture with a company, and they own the company, but we have the rights to anything outside of China. So our deal with them is that they handle everything in China directly. We handle everything that goes beyond the borders of China as a ALP buy and sell product.
There's a ton of VC money that is in our industry now that has significantly changed our industry. What's your thought about venture capital and lighting?
That's an interesting question. There are different venture capitalists. Unfortunately, the venture capitalists that I've experienced, the one that owned Interlux and the one that owned Spectrus that we purchased, they were a predatory type of venture capitalists. What they did is they invested the money in the company to buy it in the first place, and then they made as their priority to suck that money out so that whatever they sold the company for down the stream, that was their profit. And so I think venture capitalists are good. I think that they provide a very valuable function. But at the other end of the stick, they are a short-term, fast return type of thing. And I honestly believe that if you have a longer-term vision for your company, that you're better off staying away from the venture capital.
And you've always stayed away.
I have.
I mean, you do borrow money, you do have banks that you work with, but none of the venture capital.
Right.
How do you see the lighting economy today?
Well, I think the lighting economy has been impacted by the political infighting between the parties. Because of the fact that they're constantly, each side is calling the other one inept or dishonest or unfair, there's a lack of positive feeling about the future in the economy. There's a lot of money in the economy not moving. And as a result, I think that as an organized small company, we'll do okay, but some of the larger companies are having problems with that lack of activity, and lack of confidence in the economy.
And there's not a lot of new construction, at least in the U.S. So do you see these bigger companies moving towards the retrofit?
Oh yes, no question about it. I would say that more than 75% of the market today is upgrades and retrofitting.
In 2001, you went into semi-retirement. In 2002, you came out of semi-retirement.
That's right.
Why did you do that, and what is your plan now?
All right, well, I found that a bad day in the office was better than a good day on the golf course.
Okay.
And I just said, why am I doing this? I really liked being in the office as opposed to out there on the golf course. And then I found that the people I was with, which were wonderful people, they were all retired, and they really didn't have a lot to do. So I found myself really lacking interest in the conversation. And I said, why should I do this? If I like what I'm doing and I'm able to do it.
Okay.
So my retirement was 2 days a week. I actually didn't come in on Wednesdays or Saturdays. That was the extent of my retirement. But I worked Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I just said, the heck with it. I'll come back in and I'll work, Wednesdays and Saturdays. I still do that. I come in Saturday morning and I like to, by myself, sit and organize what I'm trying to.
No phone calls.
Well, it's turned out not to be that case, because people found out that I come in on Saturdays and I get an awful lot of interesting calls.
Okay.
Tardy Marketing, Bill Tardy is one of my favorites. Bill Warren is a person that I talk to on a Saturday morning.
So in these, I think 57 years you've been in the industry, who are some of the giants? Who are some of the legends that you worked with in the industry? Some of the brightest?
Well, I think Bob Freeman certainly would be in that category. Sam's son. Sam was the founder of Lithonia Lighting. I think very few people would remember it, but Sid Lefkowitz, who was the president of Midwest Lighting, was one of the fabulous people that I mentored. Murray Ryder, who was president of L&P Lighting, was a mentor of mine. Eli Winkle, who I thought was my first mentor, was just a terrific guy. I could go through a lot of people because I tend to identify with people I like.
And from what I know, you have the relationships throughout the organization, from the CEO to the buyer.
Yep.
You seem to have, I guess, an equal respect for all the channels in there, all the people in there.
Absolutely. I find that, again, if I listen to people and I understand where they're coming from, I can orchestrate my resources to help them. All my communication is by the telephone, by personal visits, which I like the best, and or the email. So I get on that machine and I have two different personas. I have William Brown, which is my ALP persona, and I have Bill Brown, which is my Bill Brown sales persona. I have two business cards.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is that I tried to give each a different personality.
Keep going.
So William Brown is a more formal name because as chairman of I think, a very substantial manufacturing group, it takes my formal name. And Bill Brown, which is a salesperson, is more informal, and so I use my informal name, Bill Brown. And again, we went to a gray and red. So the colors are not white, because I feel all the cards that I see are white. And I like to keep the back of the card empty because I generally write notes on the back of the cards, so I can remember what goes on.
So two companies, two distinct personalities.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people will want to know, why didn't you bring them together?
Yeah. First of all, I thought that by owning a company that people would feel that I was more dedicated to one over the other. And the truth is, I'm dedicated to the factories I represent as well as the companies that I own and represent.
Other subjects you want to mention?
Well, I work with my sons, and I believe...
Well, one is an attorney, and one is a CPA.
Right, and that was not my direction, by the way. My children had the right to do whatever they thought was in their best interest. Now, at our dinner table, I would be the devil's advocate. I would take positions that I didn't really believe to see if I could create some discussions so that they would be able to put forward their point of view. I have to explain why their point of view. So we had the liveliest conversations when my wife, Norma, who is the co-founder of this business, by the way, and very important to the business, and she would always wonder, what am I doing? And you don't believe that, do you? And I said, listen, why don't you pay attention to what's going on? And to this very day, I was telling Lisa, matter of fact, our marketing person, that my wife's a leader, and I'm a leader. Now, when I was going to school, and we both took a psych of marriage course, and Dr. Herning, who was took that course, was going to write a book. So he invited she and I to interview for this book that he was writing. And he was children, please come to my office. You should not get married. My wife is 98% dominant, and I'm 72% dominant.
Okay.
So I honestly think one of the assets to our marriage is, first of all, understanding that. Second of all, that I traveled a lot so that we both didn't have to conflict.
Right.
But that she is the leader in the house, and I'm the leader in the office.
And it works.
It works. My wife is a school teacher. My two daughters are both have MBAs in social work. So they're interested in the fact that they want industry to be responsible. You can't sacrifice everything for a profit. You have to maintain your integrity. You have to maintain your response. I've done business for 3 generations with people. You can't do business for those 3 generations, and if you do it dishonestly, you'll get that reputation, and that's terrible. So I don't do that. I'm very direct. I'll tell them things they may not want to hear. And my wife says you can modify it so it doesn't sound as harsh as it does. But the truth of the matter is that I do think that our integrity is very important to me as a role model for my children and my extended family too. I hear a lot of people say that the industry has changed, that it's become not as friendly, it doesn't depend on relationships. And I'd like to tell people that that's not the case. Business has always been relationships. And the day you forget those relationships is the day that you're not going to be successful in business.